Hey everyone, it's Kristan with Explicitly Pro-Life. And guess what? In this episode, we're going to show you a report that exposes the abortion industry's secret agenda. Hi everyone, and welcome to this new edition of Explicitly Pro-Life. I'm Kristan Hawkins, and I have a special guest with me today in the studio, David Bereit, the founder of 40 Days for Life. Hey, David.
Hey, Kristan. I'm excited to do this. I've been looking forward to it.
Yes, David lives actually close to our Students for Life headquarters, so I asked him to come and meet me today so we can record this special episode. He knows a lot more about podcasting than I do, so he'll probably tell me what I'm doing wrong somewhere.
You're doing a lot of things right. You're doing a lot of things right.
And also a lot of things wrong. But David, just to give everyone an intro of who you are, tell everyone kind of your story in a minute or so. I don't like to get too mushy, with background
So I was born in a
details.
hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Just a quick story. I got involved in the pro-life movement very reluctantly. I did not want to be involved in this work, but an abortion clinic opened in the town where I used to live in College Station, Texas, and my wife dragged me kicking and screaming to go out and pray on the site where it was being built. And I began to feel convicted that if children were going to die in that town, if women were going to be wounded, that I needed to do something. Mm-hmm. So I began to volunteer with the local pro-life group that was formed in response to that construction of that Planned Parenthood. A young woman named Lauren Gouldy started that group, the Coalition for Life. And I got more and more involved. I ended up serving on the board there. And in 2001, I was working as a drug dealer, a pharmaceutical sales rep, I have to clarify, all legal. And I got a call that the Planned Parenthood, which by then had opened, had aborted 10 children that day. And I just had this break in my heart where I realized I need to do more. And so I went home and I quit my job. And 2 weeks later, I was asked to take over the helm of that small pro-life organization. And we did everything wrong a few times to make sure it was wrong, but eventually figured things out. And then that was where we started the first 40 Days for Life campaign. Led that campaign. It exceeded all of our expectations, brought 1,000 people into our local pro-life efforts and brought abortions down by 28%. And then from there, it began to expand, originally organically, and then by 2007, and that's a story that we can talk about at some point, in large part influenced by my relationship with you. 40 Days for Life became a national, eventually international effort. And so for its first decade as an independent effort, I led that effort and watched it grow into the largest grassroots pro-life mobilization around the world and had an incredible season traveling to 550 countries and seeing the best of the pro-life movement all across America and around the world and seeing more than 16,000 lives saved from abortion and 100 abortion clinics closing and many abortion workers, including Abby Johnson, having conversions. It was an incredible ride. But that's a little bit that got me up to today, where today I get to work with great groups like Students for Life and other groups in advising and helping them to maximize their life-saving impact. And so we're blessed to be a part of a great movement, and it's an incredibly important time for each of us to find our place and to get engaged.
That's right. And David, I mean, if you've never heard David speak, I would say David's probably one of the most well-spoken pro-life leaders out there. I think you're the most requested pro-life speaker, super motivational.
Because my wife keeps asking for me over and over again, so it sounds like really impressive.
David presents very well the case for why you should be involved in the pro-life movement. If not you, who? Right. If not now, when? Right? And so I think if anyone's ever heard David at an event or a rally, I think you can't help be compelled by this case you make for why people should get involved. So that's actually why I asked you to be on today, because I think we need to talk about, as we're kind of closing 2019, right, going into 2020, I do want to talk about what is the abortion movement's strategy in 2020 and what should our response be as pro-lifers. Right. But before we get into that, I want to ask you what you did, quitting your job as a drug dealer, legal drug dealer, and then starting, to run Coalition for Life there in College Station. I mean, that took a lot of courage and maybe some stupidity.
Or craziness, yes, exactly.
I would say, the ideas can be courageous and they can also be just stupid.
Right.
Some people are like, wow, I can't believe you jumped in front of the Women's March, Kristan. That was so courageous. And I'm like, I really wasn't thinking of that.
A momentary lapse of judgment.
Yeah, I just did it. Now,
And
maybe
it looks
if
like it's heroic.
Yeah. Maybe if I had thought about it, I would have been like, oh, I don't know if we should do that. It's probably not the best thing to lead those 15-year-old girls in front of those feminists who are going to get violent. But so it's sometimes a mix. But I want to talk about your decision, though, too. So you left your job, you started Coalition for Life. Then you came to Washington. So I just want to do a little,
Oh my gosh,
memory lane
exactly.
thing before we get into
Yes.
like the task list of what everyone needs to do. So I met you. It was at like a Chevy's restaurant in Ballston in Arlington, and I don't know if there were margaritas in the mix, but it was you and someone else came up, and I met David, and he was like so energetic and happy and excited, and like on fire for 4 days for life. And I was like, you are completely crazy. Like, there is no way you're going to get people to commit to pray and fast and go outside and stand in front of abortion facilities for 24/7 for 40 days. This shows you how much I knew, because I was totally wrong. But then, we started working together, I think, pretty quickly
Shortly
after
thereafter,
that.
right.
I don't know if it was the margaritas or the tortilla chips that won me over.
Those things always influence decision making,
Yeah.
Well, I will never forget an important moment, and this is part of 40 Days for Life history that nobody knows. But when we had run the first 40 Days for Life campaign back at the group, the Coalition for Life, that Lauren Gouldy, that young woman, had started, and when we were really discerning, should this become an independent national effort, my thought was, I was working at the time for American Life League.
That's right, okay.
I was serving as the executive director of American Life League. Jim Sedlak from Stop Planned Parenthood had invited me up. And so in the midst of that, we started to begin to formalize these ideas of 40 Days for Life, and I thought, this is not something that could stand on its own, so it will need to be something that I help to coordinate as a volunteer, because there's nobody else to do it. And so I began thinking of it that way, and I began spreading the word to people about this idea of doing a 40 Days for Life campaign, but thinking there's no way that this could possibly be something I could devote my full-time energy to. I make a salary from my pro-life involvement in another organization. I just don't have the capacity to take that leap of faith yet again. And it was funny because we opened up applications for the first round of cities to apply. And we thought we'd have maybe 12, 15 cities that would apply.
This was fall 2007. Okay. Yeah.
And so the final day of applications was a day that I had also previously committed to come up and do a training for your regional coordinators for Students for Life. And it was your old office in Arlington. And so I came up to the office, and while I was there, I was so inspired by your leadership and your faith, just stepping out, taking Students for Life to a full-time operation, and these regional coordinators who are out there on college campuses and in regions making a profound life-saving difference. I was blown away. And I came away and said, if they can do that, if they can full-time devote themselves to saving lives on the college campuses, the epicenter of the abortion debate in our country, the least I can do is give myself fully to this effort that I'm inviting people to take a leap of faith and start running these 40 Days for Life campaigns. So I went home from that gathering at your office. I pulled up my computer and realized we had 89 cities in 33 states sign up to do 40 Days for Life campaigns. And I said, I can't ask them to do that if I'm not willing to support them full-time, like Kristan supports her regional coordinators, like the regional coordinators support those campus groups. And so I submitted my 2-week notice to American Life League.
Sorry, ALL.
Hey, and Judy Brown, to her credit, blessed me and released me immediately so I could immediately do that. And that's the only reason that 40 Days for Life became a standalone effort. So again, it's these little things. It's those moments of craziness, but it's also those moments that in hindsight we could say maybe there was some courage in that, but it was really so clear and so convicting that the crisis is so dire that we need to do everything we can. And thanks to your inspiration and your team, it inspired me to take a step of faith. And today, 40 Days for Life, hundreds of cities around the world, 800, 900,000 volunteers that have participated, 16,000 lives saved. Again, that little step of faith inspired by you, Kristan Hawkins.
Well, that's flattering. I'm sure you would have gotten inspired by somebody beyond coming to Students for Life. But
Well, the margarita helped.
Yeah, the margarita helped. But no, I think I wanted you kind of to talk about that because you told me that a couple years ago. It wasn't like
Right.
for a while I didn't know about that. I'm still waiting. Like there should be a credit in the next book or something. Students.
Well, we'll figure out some way to give you some recognition for this.
Yeah.
Maybe at the Pro-Life Summit,
All
I'll mention this to everybody
to
there.
Students for Life America. No. Yes, at the National Pro-Life Summit, you should definitely talk about
See,
that.
there's the first little ad we get to
There you
place
go.
in there for everybody coming
you have to
on January
come.
25th, not 26th, to the Pro-Life Summit in
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. Anyway,
Yes.
we'll come back to
It's
that.
the day after the March for Life, Saturday, prolifesummit.org. Register. We're already over half full. So
Boom.
David will be there. I
Oh.
think we signed David up before we even told him he was going to be speaking.
That's usually the way it
we just
works.
write David, of course, will be
This
there.
is what happened when you inspired me to do what I did. You can just basically tell me what to do, and I just say, yes, ma'am.
There you go. Sounds good. But no, I thought that was, kind of your story of kind of taking those big leaps of faith and to see that, obviously there was probably a Holy Spirit guiding in that direction and making it very clear to you of this is where we need to go. And we as my family, our organization. And I think that's so, and I think I had an episode recently I did on leadership, kind of principles of leadership.
Right.
And I don't think I covered this because I was talking more about leading others, which obviously you're thinking about what is the example I'm setting and how am I supporting those who are choosing to take a risk on me. I think that's an important key part of leadership. But I also think that courage, that also having that intuition, I think that's a part of leadership that is harder to teach someone is when do you make that decision and how do you know it's the right decision to make? And how much kind of courage are you going to have in taking that leap of faith and being willing to risk failure?
Right.
So I think that I want to commend you for that because I think that's your story, 40 Days for Life story. It's a great example for us.
Kristan, one additional thought I would add to that is not every single step of faith is the right one. And there have been times where I've taken significant steps and fallen on my face. But the key is to recognize what is at stake and are we willing to pick ourselves back up and keep going?
That's right.
So the situation when I left my job to run the Coalition for Life, when I stepped away from an existing pro-life organization to start 40 Days for Life, in each of those steps, you look back in hindsight and you say, oh, that was a brilliant step. But there have been equal times where I've done things that have been absolute disasters looking back at them. But the key is when we realize children are dying right now. Women are being wounded right now by abortion. The abortion industry is investing millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in advancing their agenda. They have aims to destroy the things that we value, including the lives of preborn children and the lives of women who are being scarred by this for a lifetime. When we realize that, we say, if I take a step, if I strive to have courage, and even if I'm nervous, and even if I fall flat on my face, am I willing to say, for those children, for those women, I'm going to pick myself back up. I'm going to learn the lesson I'm supposed to learn, and I'm going to keep moving forward. And I think it's a vital piece of leadership. Sometimes we want everything to be so convenient, and particularly working with young people, we have this perception that it's all just going to work out great because in social media, it all looks like it works out great. But the reality is we're going to fail. We're going to fall short.
That's right.
But if we pick ourselves up, keep going, we can be a part of saving lives and changing the very course of history.
Yeah, I think John Maxwell calls it falling forward, right? You are going to fail because you are not a perfect human being in any way, right? We all know that. So you have to recognize you're going to fail at some point. And the question is, and the people who kind of get to the top are the people who fail and learn something from that failure and pick themselves back up and keep moving forward. That's so critical. I saw something today on Live Action's Instagram page while I was driving down here from the airport. It said, Planned Parenthood kills the equivalent of 2 preschool classrooms every hour.
Golly.
If that is not your motivation for today,
Right.
every hour, 2 preschool classrooms are wiped out because of Planned Parenthood.
And carry that forward just a bit. I want everybody who's listening right now, I want you to, in your mind, picture your town, your city, your subdivision of your neighborhood, whatever it is. If that actually happened, if 2 preschools were shot up, all the children were killed,
every hour,
what would your community do in response? What would they say? We'll do anything. The churches, the pulpits would be aflame with that. The police department, the whole city, everything would be locked down because people would say, that's a serious problem.
we have to stop this right now.
Right. And that's what's really happening. And so you and I need to recognize the urgency of the moment and realize that without us, there are lives that will not be saved.
That's right.
We have to get engaged.
That's right. Even if we're not perfect, even if we know we're going to fail, we have to keep trying. We have to do this. How could you not? If you knew 2 preschools every hour in your town were going to be shot up and every child in that classroom was going to be murdered, you would do everything you could, even knowing you may fail, to stop that, to say, I have to stop this injustice, this atrocity from happening.
That's right.
Okay, so hopefully we gave you your dose of why you need to be engaged in this fight and why you need to continue forward. But I want you to talk, David. You turned me on to this report last summer that you had found that I believe Carol Everett's group, the terror group.
No, it was actually, the first I saw it was a reporter for Live Action that had uncovered this. It was a Texas-based reporter.
Okay.
And it stunned me when I realized what we had our hands on, and yet most of the pro-life movement is not even aware of this.
And this has been, we talked about this over a year and a half ago.
Right.
And most of the pro-life movement still doesn't even know that this report exists. I've been still sending it around to people.
Right. So let me just... let me explain the report. But first off, just to give you an idea, I want you to imagine that somehow you've been able to infiltrate the abortion industry is having a powwow of their top leaders, their top influencers, to talk about what are they going to do over the next 10 years. And in that meeting, you hear them say, we want to increase the supply of and demand for abortion. We have put millions of dollars into researching how to do this. We've mapped out our battle plan, and we are aggressively about to go out and raise tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to execute this plan to expand abortion across America. If you were in that meeting and you heard that, wouldn't you want to be shouting this from the rooftops? Well, that's exactly what happened. So the abortion industry got together their top influencers, and they said, we need to have a battle strategy because the pro-life movement is making significant gains, and we've got to push back, we've got to fight, and we've got to save our industry. And so what they did is they got all these influencers together, and they formed what they called the Reproductive Health Investors Alliance. And they created, over several years, a 94-page battle plan, and they called it their U.S. Reproductive Health Investment Case. And they mapped out everything. They looked at every state, they looked at every indicator, they looked at social data, they looked at demographic data. And they said, what do we do to expand what we're doing? And in this document, at the very beginning...
Page 4 read that mission statement. Can you find that?
Let me find... So the first thing, this is on page 9.
Okay.
And we'll put a link in the show notes to this report.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, it's very dense. There's a lot of information. But in this is the entire strategy that the abortion industry is going to use to advance their agenda. So if we want to thwart that, if we want to stop that, we need to know, in the words of Sun Tzu in The Art of War, we need to know the enemy. The enemy is the abortion industry, not any individual organization or person, but we need to understand that.
Exactly.
Their stated objective, we believe strongly that there are multiple opportunities to change the reproductive health landscape and increase the supply of and demand for abortion services. That means they're contraception and abortion services.
Which is interesting because they always say that they're not about abortion, right?
Right.
Abortion is sad and just has to happen and they're there to help. But in there they said they want to increase the supply and the demand for contraceptives and abortion. So right out there, they're telling the truth in this report. Like they're not holding back.
Absolutely. And this was not meant for public dissemination.
No, that's right.
The beautiful thing was they accidentally put it on an unsecured web page, this 94-page PDF document, and a pro-lifer found that and shared it. And I think most people start looking through and you see all these charts and graphs and things that get so overwhelming so quickly and you say, I can't even understand that. But again, this is their strategy. We need to be able to confront them at every turn. And actually, just like Wayne Gretzky always said, we don't go to where the puck is in hockey. You have to skate to where the puck is going. We have to know where the abortion industry is going so we can meet them there and defeat them on those fronts. And so in that report, in addition to talking about increasing the supply of and demand for abortion, they do this case that they're making to billionaire philanthropists and mega foundations, and they're telling them where to invest money so that they
have
can...
circles. So like the bigger the circle, the more
they
money
call it the
is
higher
needed.
the acuity, the greater the need is for those different aspects. And so, for example, one of the things that they identify, the greatest problem that they face in this front is efforts to defund Planned Parenthood. And they say we have to stop that because if and when Planned Parenthood is defunded at the state level, at the federal level, that's devastating to the abortion industry. And that should underscore for us the work, Kristan, you have done for years, you and I have partnered on for years, that defunding Planned Parenthood is crucial to advancing the agenda of the pro-life movement and thwarting the pro-abortion agenda. There are also in this report other, we could spend days going through this. And again, we'll put a summary of this, but they even say this is a call to action to philanthropists, high net worth individuals, and impact investors. And they talk about issues affecting contraception. And the key ones are the efforts to defund Planned Parenthood. They also found that minorities do not trust contraception providers because they know that contraception has been used to control their populations. So we go back to the history of Margaret Sanger, the racist eugenicist who founded Planned Parenthood, and shockingly, minorities, and they identify Black, Hispanic, low-income women, do not trust them because they suspect that they're using contraception to control their populations as a racist tactic, which they are.
Kirsten Powers, not long ago, actually, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, did an article, I think it was after the Kermit Gosnell, about Planned Parenthood's 990. And at the time, you could go to GuideStar, look up Planned Parenthood's 990, and in their stated mission on like the second page of 990, it actually said to control the U.S. population. They've taken it off since. I have a friend who actually sent me the screenshot, and she had downloaded it because she knew they were going to amend the 990s. But yeah, that's exactly what they're about.
Well, the issues affecting abortion that they identified to be highest acuity includes low reimbursement rates. So the fact that tax dollars are not currently being used in most places for funding abortion. I was just in Dallas earlier this week, and the state legislators there passed a measure to protect because in Austin, a very liberal city in the state of Texas, they were giving a sweetheart deal to Planned Parenthood where they paid $1 a year for rent to run their abortion facility. And the Texas legislature said, no, that's basically tax subsidizing of abortion, and they closed that loophole, and they passed a measure, SB 22, that closed that loophole. But they were saying this is the kind of stuff that they're seeing as limiting abortion is that, when we can't get reimbursed by the taxpayers, we can't expand abortion. They also indicate state-level legislation as a major threat.
What did we see in 2019? Did we see an increase of pro-abortion radical state legislation?
Yes, indeed we did.
Wonder where they talked about it.
It's all there. We know where it comes from. Another thing they talk about in great depth is they realize there's a great limitation in the traditional clinic model of surgical abortion delivery. And so they realize that when people hold a 40 Days for Life or sidewalk counsel outside those facilities, it hurts them.
Yeah.
And so right now, they're trying to develop, and they're talking about massive investments in research and development to come up with new chemical abortion methods, and then also lowering the level of service providers who can prescribe those, so nurses, nurse practitioners, and investments in telemedicine networks so they never even have to have a doctor see a patient before prescribing a mail-order abortion.
We know this is what's coming in the abortion industry. They want to get rid of the brick-and-mortar abortion facilities because they're easy targets. They want the OBGYN to kind of do abortions on the side, to be in the high-rise and the medical office, and they're just prescribing a pill, and they're not doing the dirty work of like ripping apart another human being. That we saw this in California with SB 24 this year. Now the California campuses are going to be dispensing this pill. So, I mean, this is where they're moving.
And here's why this is so important for us to understand. So many pro-life efforts are dependent upon the old model of delivery.
Yes.
And I'll even include the efforts that I started and led, 40 Days for Life. If all we do is keep doing what we've always done,
it's not gonna be enough.
We're going to keep getting what we've always gotten. And in fact, we're going to be seeing further setback because they're moving towards mail-order abortions. Order your abortion pills on Amazon.com is what they're moving towards, and that's what we have to be able to preemptively address and tackle.
And I think that's, I like I said, I talked about this, I think, on the leadership podcast about, don't be afraid to change your strategy or your tactics. Your mission stays the same. But you have to be willing to pivot and change. And that's something I think the pro-life movement, we're kind of slow sometimes on the uptake of, they're shifting their strategies. We need to respond. We need to be their Wayne Gretzky quote, right? We need to know where the puck is going. We need to play right there.
Right.
And so we need to get
quote
on
that I
this.
heard that I loved is, tactics are many, principles are few. Tactics always change, principles never do. So if we are too married to our tactics as opposed to our principles, we will ultimately fail. We have to be focused on principles and then adjust our tactics. And that's one of the beautiful things. Here we are at the end of a year. We have an opportunity to assess how did we do in 2019 and look to the new year. And just like we make New Year's resolutions, which many of us don't follow through on, but let's look and say, what can we do to be more effective as pro-life advocates in 2020 than we were in 2019? And by knowing where the abortion industry is going, by being able to adjust our tactics but staying true to our principles, we can save more lives than ever and make progress on being the pro-life generation, on making progress on abolishing abortion in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. I don't know why you even need me. This is the David B.
Oh my
Richard.
gosh. No, this is the
This is right.
We get together and exciting things happen. Sparks start flying.
So okay, what are your top recommendations for the grassroots pro-lifer who's involved in the community, whether on campus or in the community? What can they do in 2020 or start thinking about differently in 2020 to attack what we know is coming?
Yeah. So this is going to probably sound a little bit odd to you in terms of where I think to start. I think to start with yourself. Mm-hmm. I think before you look at the external, you need to assess what you're called to do and what your gifts and talents are that will help you to do this. And so just like a nonprofit organization, Students for Life of America has an amazing mission statement that gives clarity and direction to what you do. Each of us individually need to have, in a sense, a personal mission of knowing where we fit into this work. So I would encourage for people who are faithful to pray about this and ask for divine guidance. For those who aren't, you can certainly just do self-reflection. But I would assess your life experiences, your story up to this point, your talents, your gifts, the various different contributions that you've made in the past. And I would say start there and say, how can I bring those to bear? What can I do to save the maximum number of lives? So that would be my very first starting point.
Self-assessment. Okay. Number two would be
Number
what?
two.
Come to the National Pro-Life Summit?
There you go. Well, let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Let me bring that right in here. So once you've said, okay, I know I'm called, I feel a conviction to do something, I'm assessing where and how I can make a difference, I'm going to look at the breadth of the pro-life movement, the best place to do that is at the March for Life and the Pro-Life Summit.
That's right.
So in Washington, D.C., January 24th, join with hundreds of thousands of people on the National Mall, go to the rally on the Mall, go walk up the streets and end at the Supreme Court, and you'll get the big vision and the realization that we're part of a growing, dynamic, vibrant movement. But then the next day, go to the Pro-Life Summit hosted by many of the top pro-life organizations, including, of course, Students for Life of America, where you're going to hear from experts across the breadth and the depth of the pro-life movement.
That's what's so awesome about it.
The advantage to this is that instead of being in this isolated silo, I'm sitting at home trying to think of what I can do. And you start there, but then when you get surrounded by other people, when you get surrounded by ideas, you get inspired, you can say, that's the area I'm supposed to get engaged in. That's what I'm supposed to do. And once you identify where you can engage, dive in. And you'll understand the lay of the land. You'll understand the abortion industry, where they're going. You'll understand where the pro-life movement is moving. You'll see, and one of the things I'm most excited about in 2020 is 2019 was a year that brought about synergy that I've never seen in the pro-life movement before. Groups that were previously maybe doing their own thing that said, hey, you know what, let's find a way to work together. We don't have to sacrifice our individual unique charisms and organizational missions, but there are things we can collaborate and coordinate on. And your leadership on forging this Pro-Life Summit was a great example of that. Rather than just continue to have only the Students for Life of America National Summit, you said, what if Live Action? What if Heritage Foundation? What if these other groups were willing to come alongside? And we did this in a joint effort to demonstrate the collaboration of the pro-life movement. Each group still has its unique place, but together you're saying we can be bigger and better together.
That's right.
And so that's where I think we start, is that coordination. And then the last thing is the recognition. My last, one, self-reflection. Two, come to the Pro-Life Summit, get a breadth and depth perception to know where you can make a difference. And number three, is find where to get engaged right where you are. You are where you are for a reason. If you're on a college campus, that's the epicenter. You can change hearts and minds. You can save lives of young women who are right now in the midst of an unexpected pregnancy with a child that's at risk of dying. If you are in a community and there's an abortion facility, yes, work to close that down. If you're in a place where there's research and development being done for future chemical abortion pills, maybe you can make a difference there. If you're involved in the state efforts that involve legislative activities, get involved there. but find what's right in front of you, dive in, make a difference, and be willing to be accountable for the results. Are we seeing lives saved? Are we seeing abortion centers closing? Are we thwarting the agenda of the Reproductive Health Investors Alliance and Planned Parenthood? Are we seeing defunding of Planned Parenthood? If not, be willing to change the tactics, but stay true to the principles. Do those things, and you'll be off to a great start in 2020.
Yeah, and I think that third action item is, I think it starts with an assessment of you figuring out what is available on your campus or your community. Is there a 40 Days for Life group? What are the pregnancy centers looking like? Is there a maternity home? What are the resources available? What's going on the school board? Are there pro-lifers on the school board? What's the sex ed curriculum that's being taught in the high schools, in the middle schools, and now in the grade schools? There's an assessment that you can do and start asking questions, meeting with local pro-life leaders, people you know who've kind of been involved in the pro-life movement, to start asking around, where's the loopholes? Where is the holes that we haven't really started to fill within the community? Because I guarantee you something is going to come up. You are going to find something, especially if you want to not only just join an existing effort, but if you want to start or lead an effort, you're going to be able to find something in your community that you're going to be able to plug into, because this pro-life cause, this mission we're on, is a huge mission. That's the whole point of bringing everybody together at the National Pro-Life Summit, to show everybody that we can have these unique mission statements and our unique strategies and tactics, but our mission, our overall mission, our goal in the pro-life movement of abolishing abortion is huge, and it's bigger than any one of our pro-life organizations. And if we actually expect to achieve success, we are going to have to come together, just like how the abortion industry came together to this Reproductive Health Investors Alliance report. They all came together. They did analysis of their organizations, where they're winning, where they're losing, and they were unafraid to do that. I think we need to do more of that in the pro-life movement. And quite honestly, 2020 is going to be a huge year. We've got Ruth Bader Ginsburg's health is not well. You have some other very pro-abortion Supreme Court justices that are getting older. You've got the presidential election. I mean, this presidential election may determine the fate of Roe versus Wade for our lifetime. For our lifetime, and we know reversing Roe and Doe isn't the final battle. We've talked about this a lot, but it's step one. It's definitely step one.
Right. Well, two thoughts I want to build on very quickly. Number one is that when Roe is overturned, not if, but when, I think most people feel like, abortion will be over. But you and I know that no, that's just the next step in a longer fight. It will throw the decision back to the states. And right now, more states have enshrined in their state constitution through amendments and other measures the protection of abortion than have protection of human life. So we're going to have to be ready to duke it out state by state by state. And that's why where you live is more important than just inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C.
Where you live is way more important than what happens in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. And yet we need to all be together, unified in the same direction that we're heading, but you need to be engaged where you live. The other thing I'll say is, when you go and look at, Kristan advised, and I recommend this, talk to the pro-life leaders and the pro-life groups and the other things. But what you're going to find is the pro-life movement has not really been very aggressive and innovative in moving forward. And so much of what is being done today isn't a whole lot different from what was being done 47 years ago when Roe v. Wade was handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Not to say there isn't value in that, but we need new innovation.
That's right.
Kristan innovated when she said there's not a full-time effort engaging students to be pro-life on the campuses where the abortion industry is targeting. And so she took a step of faith with a little bit of craziness mixed in, and she started what became the National Students for Life of America.
I didn't pay him to say this, by the way.
Well, but I saw a need in that local communities needed to do something to work to close down their local abortion centers, to save lives, and also to reach out to the workers and bring healing and all of that. And so through an hour of prayer and through a step of faith and craziness, I started 40 Days for Life. And that today you look at and say, wow, look what it's done. The biggest innovations of the pro-life movement to attack what is going on in the abortion industry right now have not even been invented yet. No. And the people listening to this episode of this podcast, you may be the person that God is calling to bring the next innovation that will be bigger than Students for Life America, bigger than 40 Days for Life, bigger than anything in the pro-life movement, and could be the final straw that brings an end not only to Roe versus Wade, but abolishes abortion state by state and protects human life from conception and natural death. So don't be afraid. I know that sounds crazy. You may be thinking, David, that's too big, that's too overwhelming. But you got two people here who will cheer you on, who will encourage you, who will say, you can do it, and we will do everything we can to help you. But keep your principles focused on ending abortion, on the things that we need to do together. Collaborate with others, but you come up with the tactics, come up with the ways, and together we will see enormous progress in this coming year. Don't be afraid. Innovate. Go out on faith. You can make a profound life-saving difference. And as the theme of the Pro-Life Summit says, we're going to be what? What's the theme? History makers.
History makers.
You can be a history maker. One day when the pages of history are written about the end of abortion, they're going to be citing somebody. Who was it? And maybe it's you. So come to the Pro-Life Summit after you've discerned what you're supposed to do, then get ready to engage 2020, the biggest and best way you ever have. And today, you can mark this day in your calendar as the day of the beginning of the end of abortion. You're the ones to make that happen.
Well, now you have your daily dose of David Bereit and motivation. You've just motivated me to do more, This isn't just a normal day at work. Today, babies are going to die.
Yes.
Women are going to be harmed. They're going to be lied to. They're going to be betrayed by the abortion industry. We need to do more, and we need to be ready to innovate. We need to be ready to change it up and do what needs to be done to abolish abortion, to get this job done. And that's going to start in 2020. And the question is, what are you going to do in 2020 that's different than what you did in 2019? How much more harder are you going to work in 2020 than you worked in 2019? And I know this is an easy ask, but I think you've got your motivation down, what and why you need to work harder before. So, Dave and I hope we'll see you at the National Pro-Life Summit.
Let's not make it a hope. I'm going to just throw out a challenge here. When you come to the Pro-Life Summit, you come to the March for Life, then you come to the Pro-Life Summit. Find Kristan, find me individually, tell us you heard this episode, and then tell us the one thing you are committed to do in 2020 to turn the tide. And when you tell us that, we are then going to find a way, maybe it's through email, maybe it's by phone calls, where we're going to hold you accountable to that.
That's right.
Because we believe you are the ones who truly will be the history makers to end abortion. And we want to be standing there side by side with you. So come to the Pro-Life Summit, tell us what you're going to do, and then expect for us to hold you accountable as we work together to make 2020 a year that we have vision, 2020 vision for ending abortion for once and for all.
Amen. Thanks for tuning in this week to Explicitly Pro-Life, and we'll see you next week.